UFC Fight Night Vegas 91, Nicolau versus Perez takes place this weekend, and I'm going to go through the entire card, starting with the early prelims, ending with the main event, giving my prediction and breakdown for every single fight on the card. I'm going to start straight away with the early prelim opener of Maheshate Hayisaer versus Gabriel Benitez. I know Maheshate has had terrible results in the UFC so far. He started off very good with a KO win over Steve Garcia, which is now a win that has aged pretty well in my opinion, because Steve Garcia has become a little more than we expected him to be. You know, looks-wise, he just looks like a victim. There's certain people that just look like they're supposed to get knocked out, and we kind of assumed that of Steve Garcia, but since then he's looked really good. But Maheshate got a KO over him. Lost to Vyacheslav Borshev. A good scrap with Borshev. Borshev was just a different level above him in the striking a little bit, and got a knockdown early in the first and then put him away in the second round. But I like that Maheshate stayed composed in that fight. You know, he's not afraid to do an eye poke. I like that quite a bit, because we know fighters that go for eye pokes, they typically are going to be benefited from it. They don't get points taken away, so I don't mind that he eye poked Borshev in that fight. I feel like that's a good sign, because it shows that he's willing to do what it takes to win. I also noticed in that fight he was being outstruck, so he shot a takedown. That immediately separates him from the rest of these meatheads in the UFC. I like Maheshate. I think he's a competitor. I think he's there to win. I think he's there to be great. And Gabriel Benitez is good. You know, we've also seen Maheshate lose to Rafa Garcia, who's, you know, a pressure style, volume heavy, dangerous guy. He mixed in a lot of takedowns to beat Maheshate in their fight. Kind of exposed a little bit of a bad grappling game in Maheshate. I don't see Benitez being able to out-grapple him. I see this being a striking match, unless Maheshate wants to take it to the ground. So I'm going to go with Maheshate getting this one done. I'll say TKO in the third. We've seen Gabriel Benitez fall apart in certain scraps. And when I've seen a Maheshate fall apart, it's because he's been cracked clean by Borshev. And it's like, oh my God, how is he still standing through some of these shots? No wonder he went down. You know what I'm saying? But when I see Gabriel Benitez fight, it's like he breaks apart. You know, Billy Quarantillo beat him. You know, I know he hurt Billy Quarantillo in that fight, but Quarantillo doubled him in the first round on strikes. I don't like you not being able to put away a Billy Quarantillo if you're going to be in a pure striking match with Maheshate. Now, I'm not saying Maheshate would be able to, but am I going to trust in Benitez's finishing ability if you can't finish Billy Quarantillo? I know Quarantillo's quite good. I just look at him as a fighter, though, and I see an awful, sloppy, no athleticism bum. He's tough. He is tough, and he can bring you into a dogfight and win fights because of it, but there's other performances I don't like of Gabriel Benitez. You know, Jim Miller beating him is, you know, I know I was quite high on Jim Miller, but that's not a great. I just don't see him beating the young, hungry up-and-comer of Maheshate here. Still young in his career. Had a lot to learn. His back's against the wall. He's going to be hungrier than ever. He's taken some time. I reckon he gets this one done by TKO in the later rounds. We move on. Also, I just think he looks way better on the feet than anyone we've seen Gabriel Benitez lose to. I know Onama put him away, but people that Benitez has been in scraps with on the feet, Maheshate just carries himself a lot more technically than them. We move on. Ivana Petrovic versus Liang. Now, I wish I could tell you why I'm picking Ivana Petrovic. I just am. She's a lot bigger. She's got a lot more reach. Luana Carolina is a tough debut. I know this is all dumb reasoning and there's no real logic to this. Like, you might as well put money on the underdog, I'm going to be honest with you. But I'm just saying who I believe is going to win. Luana Carolina's a big girl. She's strong. She's physical. She's an athlete. She's sort of hard to manipulate quite a bit. You know, we saw her get a few takedowns on Ivana Petrovic. But Petrovic worked her way back up, had her own control time, got outworked in the clinch and at range here and there, but she does have a striking background. People were very high on her coming into the UFC as well. There's a reason why she's such a big favorite going into this fight. It's not just because, you know, the odds. She's a 5-1 favorite because people were high on Ivana Petrovic before she got into the UFC. Like, she was one of those fighters where on the come up, people were like, okay, watch out for this girl on the regional scene. She's coming up. So that's why I picked her in her debut and she lost. Liang, way shorter, way less physical, a little bit weak in my opinion. You know, she can get people down, but they do seem to be able to just shuck their way back up. We saw that with JJ Aldridge, who was able to get up against Erin Blanchfield, but, you know, Blanchfield's never trained a day in her life. We saw that against Mann on Fiorot. So that's interesting. You never really know with women's MMA. You never really know at all. But I'm going to trust in the physicality of Ivana Petrovic. I don't know. Liang, I just don't see much from her. She gets finished quite a bit. She gets finishes as well, but she's just been consistently finished 3 times in a row in women's MMA. And normally women don't get finished in MMA, you know? Normally they come in, they lose a split decision, a 29-28 here and there, you know what I mean? That's normally the career of a women's MMA fighter if she's going to lose. She might get finished, but she might lose a decision, get dominated, or the always split decision that we see all too often. I'm going to go with Luana Carolina. I think it says something if you're consistently being finished in women's MMA. I think that's a sign that you're really making some mistakes. You know what I mean? At least Ivana Petrovic is composed enough to go to a close decision and not leave herself in finishable position. So on finishing potential alone, I'm going to go with Ivana Petrovic. And I like her ground game. She's got rear naked choke. She's got reversals on the ground. So I'll go over to win this fight by submission in the later rounds after maybe some grappling problems early. We move on. Up the card, James Llontop versus Chris Padilla. Now, this is a dangerous one for James Llontop, but I think he's had a bit of a JDM-esque career. And when I tell you that, you're going to be like, what are you talking about? But there's a composure within him when you watch him fight, which speaks to the consistency that he's had. And I know you might say, well, he's not undefeated. He's 14-2. He was 2-2 to start his career. Iffy results, didn't look too great. And since then, he's been on a 12-fight win streak. Now found himself in his UFC debut. Won his fight on the Contender Series against a tough, athletic dude as well, who was like built like, I mean, the dude was maybe on the sauce, to be honest with you. I wouldn't put that past him. But James Llontop beat a good guy on the Contender Series, was 6-1, and he fought for FFC as well. Now, when we talk about his opponent, we're talking about Chris Padilla. Chris Padilla came up on Next Up FC, like it's a really low level, no-name promotion, bunch of cans, not really fought any real level of competition. He fought Justin James, who's like a long-time retired UFC fighter. He beat him while Justin James was on like a 5-6 fight losing streak. So, you know, you take that with a pinch of salt. And also Justin James was never that good anyway. But Chris Padilla, he's all right. He's athletic. He's dangerous. I just think James Llontop has this level of composure. Plus, he's... I mean, I'm just going to assume based on a look of him that he's got a decent chin. I know you shouldn't really do that, but, you know, these types from, you know, below the border in the US, they seem to have great chins. You know what I'm saying? Wherever they're from. I think this guy's Peruvian, is he? So not, you know, not too far just south of the US. But you know what I'm saying? These, I don't even know how to classify that whole region. I guess Central America, North, South America type vibe. Typically great chins. You know, I mean, it just seems like he does. I feel like I can trust his chin. And there's that JDM in him as well that I was talking about, where he's got composure. You see a lot of these fighters, and even his opponent was doing this on the Contender Series. Have you ever seen that clip of Canelo Alvarez, where he hits Triple G with his best shot and his eyes sort of go like that? And you can see a bit of doubt in him, like, damn, I just hit that guy with my best shot clean on the chin, and he just walked straight through it. You see a lot of fighters with that type of look in their eye, you know. They might get a finish, they might get a head kick out of nowhere eventually in the fight, but they look unsure of themselves. Llontop has that Holloway-esque vibe where he's wide-eyed the whole time, got his guard up. He may seem slower than others, but he's very composed. He's like JDM a little bit. Not in skill level, but in the composure that he has in the pocket, keeping his hands up, watching shots go by and finding his counters. He landed a really good counter right hand at one point in his fight on the Contender Series, ducking under and perfectly timing it. There was just a level of something where it's like, damn, he's got to have talent to do this, like within combat. So I'm going to go with James Llontop over Chris Padilla. Plus, on top of all else I've said technically, James Llontop, he had a full training camp. He was supposed to fight Lando Venata. Then he was supposed to fight Gabe Green. And Chris Padilla stepped in on very short notice. So Chris Padilla had a fight booked a month after this. All of the information I'm giving you guys had a fight booked. So he has had a training camp. But I worry when it comes to like making weight for him. It's going to be a tough weight cut. Normally when you get into this like 5 weeks out from a fight that you've got, you're still quite big. You're going to start trimming it down once it gets within a month of the fight. And then you can start making your weight cut a week out. But I feel like he might be going into this weight cut to 155 a bit heavier. It isn't a catch weight. They're both lightweights. They haven't changed anything. He's expected to make 155. So expect maybe a weight miss or a bad weight cut for Padilla. We'll see. But Llontop's way more prepared on top of the fact that I just trust his skill level a lot more. I'm going with him. We move on. Kelten Souza versus Marnic Mann. Now, I'm going to go with Kelten Souza here over Marnic Mann. Now, I know Marnic Mann's got the word man in her name, so there might be some hints there from God. You never know. like, pick this one seriously. Look at her jaw. But I'm going to go with the more masculine-looking girl. Kelten Souza, way more masculine. We know women, Brazilian women have deeper voices than their men. It's weird, but that's just how it is. I don't know what's going on. I don't know why I said I don't know what's going on. I was just trying to disguise a burp that I had just then. But she got finished in her last fight by Karine Silva. We'll get to Karine Silva a second, because I actually think Karine Silva's pretty good. Marnic Mann is awful. She's terrible. She shouldn't be in the UFC. She lost on the Contender Series against Bruna Brazil, who we found out is not all that herself anyway. Let's just be honest. But she got beaten by Bruna Brazil. Before that, she was going to like a split decision against a 1-1 opponent. You know, she had a bit of an amateur career, but, you know, she's taken a 3-3 opponent to the third round, and the third round. Like, I just don't like the level of opponents that she's taken on. She then went to a decision on the regional scene against a 7-6 opponent after losing on the Contender Series and getting head kicked. Now she just got beaten up dominantly by Josephine Knudsen in her UFC debut, and the UFC still keeps her around. So I don't understand why they do this. Kelten Souza's a lot more dangerous. She's got a lot more finishing potential. I mean, out of her earlier fights, I mean, I think she's had 13 wins, 7 or 8 TKOs. So really impressive there. I'm going to go with her. I think she's got more power on the feet, more physicality. She got caught by Karine Silva, but I think Karine Silva's really good. So before that, she was on a bit of a win streak, had momentum, was in Invicta. So there is some sort of like skill-based matchmaking going on. Can't say that as much about LFA women's divisions. I'm going to go with Karine Silva winning the fight. We move on. Don'Tale Mayes versus Caio Machado. You know what? I'm going to go with Don'Tale Mayes over Machado. This is actually a tricky fight to predict. They have Don'Tale Mayes as an underdog here, so I guess this is my underdog so far on the card. I'm not actually sure of the odds of the other one I've picked. Maybe I have picked an underdog somewhere, but I doubt it. But Don'Tale Mayes is a slight underdog because I picked him and I thought, I wonder if he's an underdog, and he was. Machado is getting a lot of points for beating Mick Parkin. And I say beating Mick Parkin. I know on his record it says it's a loss, but he arguably should have won that fight. Now, he got a Mick Parkin that opted to grapple offensively quite a bit in that fight, which I think slowed down Mick Parkin. I actually think if Parkin had more of a keep it purely on the feet game plan, he would have had a much better chance of winning the fight. But Machado did well against Mick Parkin. Something I do want to mention about that Mick Parkin fight from Machado, though, and something that won't happen against a much taller Don'Tale Mayes. I'm going to point it out. He headbutted Mick Parkin so many times. There was marks all over Mick Parkin's face, on his nose, on his eyes. Eyes started swelling shut. Machado, no joke, in the first round of that fight, you can find like 4 or 5 head clashes from him where he's just dipping his head down into Mick Parkin's face, which is, I think, I watched it back. Normally I just look at it and go, damn, I don't know if Mick Parkin won that one, but I was looking at it back, I'm like, damn, that damage on Mick Parkin's face is from head clashes. I don't think he gets away with that against a taller Don'Tale Mayes. I also want to speak about this. Machado's 6'4". He's used to being the much taller fighter. The much taller fighter. He throws with his hands by his waist. Now, I know we've all seen Jalen Turner, Bobby Green, and I'm not trying to make a direct comparison between the two of them here, but one thing I do want to bring up is people with their style as hands down, people that typically have a hands down style of fighting, seem to really struggle with people that are taller than them because the punches are coming from like above. Not above, but you know what I mean? They're coming from a much higher angle. So it's a lot riskier to have your hands down. And Machado non-stop has his hands down. Against Mick Parkin, he would throw a low kick and just have his hands by his waist. Both of them. Not throwing one back for momentum like you normally could. Both hands by his waist while he's throwing these body kicks. And then he'll step back into his stance and there'll be like a gap of like 2 or 3 seconds when he's got his hands down by his waist. As much as Don'Tale Mayes isn't too talented and he's a big fat dum-dum, he's quite athletic. You know, I'd say he's more athletic than Machado, which I think does give him a benefit here. I like the athleticism. I like that he's got a bit of reach over a guy who's used to having the range advantage on his opponents. I like that he's taller against a guy who normally throws a lot of his punches quite low, from the hips, very Bobby Green-esque. I'm going to go with Don'Tale Mayes. I think his taller stature will work for him here. I think he has the better ability to catch a one-shot finish. I don't think Machado has that ability. From what we've seen, he does have good volume. But we watched a guy on the Contender Series that I thought sort of sold me a little bit on Machado was his performance on the Contender Series that he had against Kevin Flarsky, who did not throw a fucking punch against him for 3 straight rounds. You can watch back the fight. I was like, damn. I looked at the stats. I thought, wow, is this really a great dominant win? And I was like, no, Kevin is a fat nobody and refused to throw punches and refused to try and do damage to Machado. Don'Tale Mayes ain't going to be like that. And I hate to use this as an example of a good win, but Don'Tale Mayes just KO'd Andre Arlovski. And we see a lot of heavyweights struggle with Andre. Okay, so we see a bit of a separation there between Don'Tale Mayes and the rest of the very low-level heavyweights. I don't think Machado's going to grapple. It seemed like he wasn't too good at it against Parkin. We've seen Don'Tale Mayes have some good trips and sweeps. So I think the grappling is going to negate itself. They're going to be neutral there. If anyone has an advantage, I think it'll be Don'Tale Mayes just being a bit bigger and stronger. And I like his taller frame against a guy who keeps his hands down. I know I'm scratching my nose quite a bit. I don't know why it's itching. I'm going to go Don'Tale Mayes. He just caught Arlovski. I think he's going to start believing in himself. He had some good, slick, striking-looking moves. The eye test, I'm going to go with Don'Tale Mayes. I do worry about how he's going to deal with the kicks, but I think punching-wise, he'll catch. I think he'll catch Machado while he's kicking him with a good stiff shot down the pipe and put him out on one leg. That's what I think is going to happen. We move on. Austen Hubbard versus Michal Figlak. I'm going to go Figlak. I actually believe that Figlak is really good. And I've thought that about him for a long time. Now, I know I do hype up these Cage Warriors guys quite a bit because I actually watch them. Like, I watch KSW, I watch LFA. So if I've watched a guy come up, I'll very much hype them a bit more because I've actually watched them and I believe in them from a regional level and I see them go on to become, about to become in the UFC. I know he lost to Faresiam. I think it's a very tricky style matchup for him as a shorter guy with much shorter arms for the division because Figlak is quite short. Doesn't have too short of arms, but he's a very tucked up fighter. I feel like that's just a tricky matchup for him against Faresiam. He still made it competitive, but he lost. Not a great look, but again, he took that fight on short notice. Took that fight on short notice. Just for Aji Sardari, like a few weeks before that, and immediately got a call up again. So I doubt he was right back in training camp. I imagine it was a situation where he sort of took his foot off the pedal. He got a big win over Aji Sardari. Huge win for him, the biggest win of his career. And then UFC calls him and says, Faresiam in a few weeks, are you ready? Wasn't ideal for him. I think he's good, though. I think he's done good. I think he's really good. He trains with Leon Edwards at that gym. Renegades. Love that he works there. He does a lot of work with Arnold Allen in that gym as well. I think that's a really good gym for him. And he's a young up-and-comer here. He's 27 years of age. He's only lost once. It was his UFC debut. It was on short notice. He was supposed to fight Chris Duncan a couple of weeks back. It got postponed. Now he's got a fight with Austen Hubbard, so he's going to be fully prepared. And I think Austen Hubbard just looked awful against Kurt Holliber. Really, really slow. The guys that he beat on the Contender Series are awful fighters. That season was full of awful fighters. I'm going to go with Michal Figlak. I think he's a more technically sound fighter. I think he can stuff takedowns. Even if he does get taken down, he'll work his way back up. And I can see him finishing Austen Hubbard in an Ilia Topuria-esque way at the late second or third round. Body shots to head shots, combinations, putting on the pressure. He's got unrelenting pressure. I'm going to go with Michal Figlak. We move on. Rani Yahya versus Victor Henry. I'm going with Victor Henry, man. It's just... It's kind of hard to pick against Victor Henry on this card, if I'm honest with you guys. Very hard to pick against Victor Henry. I think he's one of the locks of the card. The thing is with Rani Yahya, man, he's just so fucking old. Like, there's not much more to say about it than that. He's very old. He's 39 now at bantamweight. Like, if this is like heavyweight, I'm like, okay, but he's still got it. But no. Very old. Just got smoked in the first round by Montel Jackson. Before that, he beat Kang Hyo Kang, who's iffy. Can't really grapple, but he can strike a little bit. But he's always had a hole in his grappling, and he's never really been a good grappler. Ray Rodriguez is awful. Shit tier. Should never have been in the UFC. And his last good performances were back in 2020. And even before then, he fought some real shit tier fighters. So he's kind of slipped up the rankings. under everyone's radar because he's just fought absolute bums. Probably because they're the only people he's willing to accept fights against. Because when he does accept fights against a Montel Jackson, he'll get smoked in the first round. Victor Henry's very consistently good. He's very difficult to finish. He's very difficult to finish on the ground. He's very difficult to keep on the ground. He's very difficult to get takedowns on. He's not a young, up-and-coming guy who's got an ability to try and KO someone in the first round that maybe if Rani Yahya survives, he can expose a grappling weakness or a cardio weakness in the later rounds. This is a guy where we know he can be good for 3 rounds. We know he can be top level for 3 rounds. Did he get figured out by a Sun Sao? But I think a Sun Sao is a way more craftier vet and a way more in-prime physical specimen than Rani Yahya is. And even that fight was still quite close. So I'm going to go with Victor Henry. Unanimous. Probably a late TKO. I'll say a decision. He just beats the hell out of Rani Yahya for 3 straight rounds. But Yahya might have a moment of success where he gets the back. But I think that Victor Henry has the ability to survive it. So if Victor Henry loses, I'll be very shocked. We move on up the card. Tim Means versus Uros Medic. I'm going to go Uros Medic. I think he's really dangerous. I think Tim Means could arguably lose to Matt Semmelsberger, but you know what? Matt Semmelsberger would probably drop him and then fail to finish him because he plays Dungeons and Dragons and has no finishing instincts because he's not a savage, even though he quite looks like one. So I'm probably going to have to go with Uros Medic. More explosive, more dangerous on the feet, coming up from a tougher division. And Tim Means just seems like he's hitting that Ricky Glenn moment. You know, every white veteran has that Ricky Glenn moment where you just look at him fight once and go, how the fuck did he ever look good against so-and-so? You know what I mean? And he did beat Andre Fialho, which was a good win. A pretty good win. I think Uros Medic's better chin than Andre Fialho. Had good cardio against Semmelsberger. At altitude, he had great cardio against Semmelsberger, so I'm not going to worry about him getting out-grinded by Tim Means. And he even looked really dangerous against Oralblai, who's a really good prospect himself. And now everyone's talking about him coming up. And Uros Medic nearly put him out in the first round. And Oralblai had to wet blanket him like they all do. So yeah, I'm going to go with Tim Means. I reckon he'll get this one done. I'm going to go Uros Medic, sorry. I reckon he'll get this one done by TKO. I like Uros here. I think Uros is talented. I think he's got the ability. And he's kind of a slow burner in the UFC. You know, he's lost a bit of hype here and there, but he's coming into his prime now. He's at 170, he's 6'1". I don't know how he was ever making lightweight. I reckon he'll have a good performance here and put away Tim Means by TKO. Probably a body kick. He has really nasty body kicks. And Tim Means is a very long torso, very high guard. Old man, white guy, probably drinks a lot. I'm going to go with Uros Medic, TKO to a liver shot. We move on. Jonathan Pearce versus David Onama. I'm going to go David Onama. I'm going to go David Onama as an underdog here. People have Jonathan Pearce as a favorite. The majority of people are picking Jonathan Pearce as well. I'm just going to double check who the majority of people are picking here. See if I am going against the odds like a true edgelord. They are. You know, closer to 60% of people are picking Jonathan Pearce in this fight, which is, I guess, is why he's the favorite. But I'm going to go David Onama as the underdog. I'm going to go against the masses. I'm going to say that he wins. I really don't like Jonathan Pearce's striking more than I don't like David Onama's takedown defense and commitment. First of all, David Onama, he's got momentum and he knows that. You know what I mean? He's just got a win against Gabriel Santos. Had a fight fall through against Lucas Alexander. He hasn't fought in quite a long time. It's going to be nearly 10 months since he's fought, which I don't mind because he's a younger fighter, so he will be improving. Coming up to 29 now, coming into his prime. I think that's good for him. Time off, refocus, make him hungry. Hasn't had a paycheck in a while. I think he's going to be committed to this training camp to get himself paid. It's not like he's just coming off a 50K, you know, 2 50K performance bonuses in a row like he was going into the Landwehr fight, where Kraus said he just wasn't showing up to training. So, and he still made that Landwehr fight a hell of a fight as well. So, you know, I think David Onama's got a real shot. I think he's got a solid chance of putting out Jonathan Pearce because I was looking back at some of Jonathan Pearce's fights. And his stand-up is atrocious. Like, he just doesn't have the hand-eye coordination of a guy that's there to be good at stand-up. You know what I mean? He doesn't have the hand-eye coordination for it. I don't like the look of his stand-up whatsoever. I was watching back his fight against Darren Elkins. David Onama flatline KOs Darren Elkins, man. I know how Elkins can grapple a little bit. Onama would survive him and TKO him in any way that he wants to, or wouldn't even have to survive him and just put him away. Pearce really kind of struggled in moments against Darren Elkins. I don't like that. I know he beat Christian Rodriguez. It was Rodriguez's debut. He wasn't a weight advantage for once in his fucking life. So he got out grappled in that fight. Still made it a hell of a fight, though. So, I'm going to go David Onama here. I think he's way faster off the mark. I think he's got a massive advantage on the feet. And if you want to talk about grappling of Jonathan Pearce, I know he's got a very, pressuring game, and he can out-grapple people, and he can put his will on people, but Mason Jones is a really underrated grappler himself. I know I'm not hyping him up here because you've seen him grapple with good fighters, and he'll chuck them off of him, and he will get back up, and he will shoot his own takedowns and get trips and sweeps. He's very technical in grappling. And, Welsh fighters from the UK typically are. This ain't just some random English or Scottish guy. You see it with Jack Shaw as well. The Welsh Brett Johns even have a real understanding of grappling in the UK more than any other nation within the UK. So I'm going to say he looked good against Mason Jones on short notice, stepping up. Just fought a few weeks before that, got a KO. Upper weight class at 155. Mason Jones is a big, thick, dense Welsh 155er. Big fucking fat Welsh iron, like anvil head. Typical Welsh build, dense as fuck. Broad, inverted ribs, a lot. And he's really, really gave David Onama like a grappling session. Onama nearly got through. Like, he was getting up. He was scrambling with him well. It looked like he was gassing out, but he kept pushing through it. Same thing with Nate Landwehr. Dropped Nate Landwehr in the third round of that fight. Went to a majority decision loss. I'm going to side with Onama taking his career serious. Coming off a KO win over Gabriel Santos, who arguably could have beaten Lerone Murphy. And nearly did it on short notice. And Lerone Murphy's really good. So I'm going to go with him. I like his grappling defense. I like his cardio. I like his scrambles. And I think he'll catch Jonathan Pearce at some point in the feet in the second or third round. So I'm going to say late second round TKO for David Onama. Blasting a straight right off the shoulder straight into the face of Jonathan Pearce while he goes for one of his goofy, slow as fuck kicks. I'm going David Onama upset. We move on. Jhonata Diniz versus Austen Lane. People are talking about this matchup as well. Now, Austen Lane could win this. He really could. He's quite technically good. He looks like he wants to be good. He just doesn't have the ability for it because he doesn't have the reactions of a fighter. He's scared of getting hit. And that really doesn't help at heavyweight. You know what I mean? He throws his arms out, James Vick style, chin wide open in the air. He's scared to be punched. Not a great thing to have if you're a heavyweight. And that's often why he gets KO'd. People rush him. He puts his hands way away from his face. And he just gets chinned with his chin way up in the air. Jhonata Diniz. We got to talk about this guy, though. Glory kickboxer. Has done a lot of training with world-class kickboxers. He done a lot of training with Rico Verhoeven. This guy's seen elite level, world level at kickboxing. He hasn't achieved it, but he's been in training camps of people who have. Rico Verhoeven is what? Undefeated as a heavyweight glory champion for what? 11 years? Over a decade now? Coming up to a decade? I don't even know. Like, Rico's been on top for a long time and just won another tournament, like a free-stage tournament that he came out on top of. As he just won again. Rico Verhoeven's still doing his damn thing. So, that's no joke. That's what we see when... I'm not saying this guy's Aspinall, but Aspinall came up training with Rico for his stand-up. This guy's not Tom Aspinall. Does not have the same athletic potential whatsoever. But he's 6'4", and he's got a long reach as well, nearly an 80-inch reach, which is good for him. Austen Lane, I think, has an 80-inch reach himself, maybe even longer, actually. I think he's got a ridiculously long reach. I'll find out right now. No, 80-inch reach, taller than Jhonata, but one thing I like about this is that Jhonata is really good at keeping his chin tucked. His chin doesn't come up. He was actually getting lit up a little bit by Eduardo Neves, who's a very, although fat, very talented boxer with quick hands on the heavyweight regional scene. Was a 22-year-old at the time. Now 24 and got some momentum back. And he was landing some shots on Jhonata in their fight that they had on the Contender Series on Diniz. And Diniz took him well, though. He kept his chin tucked the whole time. He had really good 1-2s, crisp timing on them. He was very patient and composed and in the guy's face the entire time. Even if he was being outstruck, the other guy was the scared one. Because he was in his face the whole time, ready to stuff takedowns, keeping his hands tucked, eyes wide open, chin really low and tucked over. He has a really good fundamental stance for heavyweight striking, in my opinion. Not a lot is going to clip him right on the chin while he's got his head up in the air. You know what I mean? Especially not against a taller guy like Austen Lane. So, Austen Lane's good. He's fast. He's athletic. But I'm going to go with Jhonata Diniz. I think he'll find a TKO. I think he'll catch Austen Lane going for a kick. I can see Lane going for some body kicks. And I can see Jhonata just going, bah, bah, jab, 2, straight down the pipe while Lane's on one leg. And I'm going to trust him to get the KO here. He smoked every opponent they've given him in MMA. They've given him a bunch of cans, to be fair. But he also smoked the guy on the Contender Series that was 7-1. So I'm going to go with him. He's had a long kickboxing career. He's fought Rico Verhoeven himself, gone to a decision against him. Like, this is a fucking difficult guy to put away. So if Austen Lane puts him away, on the feet especially, I'll be shocked. And Lane, he's not a great offensive grappler. You know, we've seen him get a ground and pound TKO on the Contender Series, but that was after the guy that he fought took him down and then, like, lost top position and ended up on bottom. But the guy took him down and got mount on him in that fight for quite some time. So he reversed it and got a TKO. I don't see Diniz shooting takedowns. I see him keeping composed, waiting to land a big shot on the feet, and they're in the smaller cage in the apex. I think that's good for a hunter, and that's exactly what Diniz is. He's a hunter. He stalks people, he walks them down, and catches them while they're trying to plant and throw. So I'm going to go Jhonata Diniz gets this one done by TKO. We move on. Up the card. Karine Silva versus Ariane Lipski. I'm going Karine Silva. Consistency. Recent levels of consistency from Karine Silva have superseded Ariane Lipski's overall somewhat goodness in fights. You know, we've seen Ariane Lipski beat Casey O'Neill, and she is on a 3-fight win streak, split decision to Melissa Gatto. Not too great of a performance there. J.J. Aldridge win, I don't rate that too highly either. Casey O'Neill's garbage. No power in her shots, no athleticism. The one of them soft, fat-bodied women. You know, I feel like we need to start noticing them a bit more and start pointing them out like they're not going to win. Like, you know, Mann on Fiorot type build and Erin Blanchfield type build. We kind of should have seen it coming. Certain women just aren't athletic, and Casey O'Neill's one of them like droopy, saggy, melting women, you know. So I'm going to go with Karine Silva. I don't rate Ariane Lipski's wins too highly. I think she's well-rounded. I like Karine Silva's submission game a little bit better. I know they've both got knee bars, but I feel like Ariane Lipski will take a submission that's just there in front of her and like just happens to be within her pathway. Like, oh, look, there's a knee bar randomly during this scramble. I'll go for that. Oh, I got it, you know, whereas we're seeing Karine Silva consistently put these women in these positions on the ground and force them into these positions. And she's got however many submissions in a row now. Let me check. She's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 submissions in a row. 5 inside the first round, 1 inside the second. And she's fought good opponents. She fought a 22-3 woman from Asia, Kui Yan. On the Contender Series, she fought a 13-3 opponent, Ketlin Souza. Marina Moroz is a good grappler, and she choked her out in round 1 with a guillotine. I'm going to go with Karine Silva. I like her consistent finishing ability. I think finishing women, finishability is something that will literally just take a female fighter from unranked to ranked, and then you find out when they fight Shevchenko, oh wait, this girl can't stuff a takedown, or oh wait, this girl can't strike. So finishing ability will get you to the top. It just won't make you champion at women's MMA. So I'm going to say Karine Silva. She'll get to the top. She'll get past Ariane Lipski. We move on. Up the card. Ryan Spann versus Bogdan Guskov. I'm going with Ryan Spann over Bogdan Guskov. I was watching back quite a few Bogdan Guskov fights. And one thing this man has never fought. You ready for it? Someone taller than him. Never. And he has a style, and I'll bring you back to the Bobby Green, Jalen Turner scenario, of hands by his waist, a lot, hands by his waist, and all of his knockouts from what I've seen are like Yuri-style right hands from the waist to the chin, or they're like shovel hooks that he landed on Zach Pauga with like a lead right shovel uppercut. Like, he lands these, like, Zach Pauga is what? I'm going to look up some of the heights of these guys because I was watching it back. They all seem shorter than Bogdan, and Bogdan's what, 6'2"? Pauga's 6'2". Maybe Bogdan's a little taller of a 6'2" than he is. I think Ozdemir's 6'2" as well. You know, Carlos Eduardo, he fought on the regional scene. These fat old men, unathletic guys, is 6'2", but a 40-year-old man when he fought against Bogdan. And, you know, these other guys, 5'11". You got a guy here that's 5'11" as well. Like, it's just, I feel like he's fought a lot of shorter guys, so he's got himself in a habit. This guy 5'10", 6 foot. A lot of shorter guys for light heavyweight. So he's got in a habit of like throwing these shots from the hip because he's taller than them and he'll land on them. I don't know how he's going to fight lunging over the top. He hasn't fought that way in his last however many fights. And he got smoked by Volkan Ozdemir in round 1 before keeping his hands down. He got cracked with a left hook on the counter, wobbled and then put away on the ground. And Zach Pualga was fucking him up. I watched back that fight. Dude, Zach Pualga was fucking him up. Messing him up bad. Chopping his low kick, destroying his leg in that fight, cracking him on the chin. Often, Bogdan landed a really good shovel uppercut, wobbled Zach Pualga, and then put him away. Also, I poked Zach Pualga in that fight as well. But, I think Ryan Spann's going to have the eye poke advantage. He's got the reach. He's got the length. He's got the range. This is the first time that Bogdan is going to be fighting a taller opponent. I just don't know how he fights like that. You know what I mean? I don't know how he fights fighting a way taller, lankier guy. His whole style has been built around throwing these shovel shots from the waist and these lunging Yuri-style shots. But Yuri's 6'4". Like, Yuri's a big dude. So, I'm going to go against Bogdan here. I'm going to go with Ryan Spann. Although he's dumb as fuck, I think he will low-kick Bogdan because it is there for him. I don't think he'll need many to make Bogdan feel it either. So, I'm going to go with Ryan Spann. He's taken some time off since his loss to Smith. It was a split decision. He lost it because he's dumb. It wasn't lack of talent. It's just dumb. He's meat-headed, 50 IQ. I'm going to go with Ryan Spann here. You know, I'll go with him to win. Plus, I like his guillotine, his strength in certain positions when shorter guys try and shoot on him especially. I'm going to go Ryan Spann. We move on. Up the card. Matheus Nicolau versus Alex Perez. I'm going Matheus Nicolau here. I think he's the more technical, well-rounded fighter, and I don't trust Alex Perez's finishing ability. I think to beat Matheus Nicolau, you need finishing ability. You need something shocking, something wild that's going to put him away. And so far, that's the only way we've seen him beat in the UFC. He got head kicked by Dustin Ortiz back in 2018. He got kneed in the face by Brandon Royval. And outside of that, this dude's undefeated in MMA since 2012. Where he got clip KO'd by a 13-1 fighter who was very explosive, Pedro Nobre. Put him out with one shot. Listen to that, though. Very underrated guy, this guy, Nicolau. Kneed in the face out of nowhere by Royval, who's good at doing that type of stuff to shorter flyweights. Dustin Ortiz put him out with a head kick that clipped him off the side of the head and put him away. And other than that, this dude has not lost a fight since 2012. Outside of those 2 fights where he got clipped, one was in 2018. The other one was in 2023. So he's had like 2 5-year runs. 1 6-year run, 1 5-year run of nothing but wins. Lost on the contenders, on the Ultimate Fighter in the finals. Actually, lost in the finals. But still, I like this guy. I think Matheus Nicolau's good. I think he's composed. And I think that Alex Perez is just basic. He doesn't do anything dynamically good at flyweight. He's very Bionicle-ish in his punches, the way he throws hooks. He has got some finishing potential. He has had some finishes. I know the Husiev Omega fight kind of made everyone think, oh my God, this guy's going to be champ. And then everyone's just beating him. I don't rate an arguable win over Makhachev. I think Makhachev's dog shit. I don't think Makhachev can strike at all. I don't think he can grapple at all. Like, he's got good entries and good wrestling and good cardio, and he can push, but there's no control there. There's no jiu-jitsu ability. It's cowardice in the 3rd round. It's pussy-ass shit on the feet. No conviction in his striking. No offense, Makhachev. I'm just breaking down a fight. I think Nicolau's got way more talent. Way more talent, more footwork, better game planning. I reckon he'll find the mark on Perez. Maybe a decision win. I'll say 4-1 decision win for Matheus Nicolau. Maybe Perez gets around. Who knows? Like and subscribe. See you later. Goodbye.